So we are going to finally close out the 1001-2008 Homestead Credit Fund. Most people have been asking, when are we going to do that? Some of you may have already closed it out, and we don't want to know. But along the topics for this today, thought I'd bring up the history of the fund because there are probably many here that don't know how this even started. How did we end up with this fund? And then how you're going to determine the balance and closing out the fund and allocating the balance to the taxing units, and then what the process at this coming December settlement is going to be. So how the fund started was back in 2008. By House Enrolled Act 1001, in the legislative session in 2008, the legislators appropriated money for homestead credits for 2008, 9, and 10 at different amounts. The $620 million on 2008, 140 for 2009, and then 80 million in 2010. Each of the years, the homestead credit rates were calculated by the county auditors. The rates were, homestead rates were uniform rates. Back when the rates were being calculated, there was some money being held back each year. Not the full amount was used to calculate the rates. The reason for that is that there was money held back for the mobile home homestead credits, and also to have money available for corrections that would happen might happen to those 3 years of homestead tax bills. Now we're beyond the 3-year correction period for the 2010 tax bills. So now we can close out the balance, whatever the balance might be, in the fund at this time. So the first step in the process is going to be determining the fund balance. Hopefully this is a pretty simple step. Hopefully all that you have to do is go to your funds ledger and look up the HEA 1001-2008 Homestead Credit Fund, and there's the balance in the fund. If for some reason that Homestead Credit Fund wasn't maintained as a separate fund in your fund ledger, then you have some work to do. You're going to have to reconstruct what the balance should be, and that'll be going back to 2008 and coming forward, tracing transactions and developing a fund balance. But hopefully that's nothing any of you have to do. And all you need to do is look at the balance in the fund just prior to the December 2014 settlement. So when you look up the fund balance, you see that the fund balance is 0, then you have no fund balance to close out. But chances of that fund having a 0 balance is very, very suspect. It's really slim to none chance that there's a 0 balance. On the other hand, when you look up that fund balance, you find that the balance is very large, either positive or negative. Then also that balance could be suspect, maybe not as much so as the 0 balance. Typically you think 0 is good. In this case, 0 is probably not good, because it's just really, I can't imagine that the fund would have a 0 balance. So both 0 balances and very large positive or negative balances must be examined to verify that there are no what I call non-1001-2008 homestead transactions posted to the fund. But the fact that the fund balance is large isn't absolute that it's wrong. It may be large because there was a large number of homestead credit corrections, or there may have been one or two very large homestead corrections that hit the fund balance after the homestead credit rates were calculated. So when we're closing out this, both positive and negative fund balance is going to be closed out. That condition of positive or negative of the balance, fund balance, isn't going to affect whether or not you're going to close it out, but it is going to affect how the balance is closed out. If the fund balance is negative, then it will be closed out by deducting money from the taxing unit's property tax distribution at the 2014 December settlement. If it's positive, then the balance will be closed out by distributing additional money to the taxing units at the December 2014 settlement. If you're deducting money, you're going to be deducting the money against the taxing unit's general fund balance or general fund distribution, except for schools. And for schools, it will be deducted from the transportation fund. If there is additional money distributed to the taxing units, then you're going to be distributing it to the taxing unit for their levy excess fund. The balance of the 1001 Homestead Credit Fund is going to be allocated to each taxing unit, and the abstract amounts or homestead, the 1001 homestead amounts on the 2008, 9, and 10 abstracts is what's going to be used to determine the taxing unit allocations. And the total of the 3-year abstract amounts will be summed up by taxing district on an Excel worksheet that we will do. Then we will be sending to you that worksheet for you then to use the taxing district amounts to determine the taxing unit amounts. And then once you've determined the taxing unit amount, then you'll be dividing the taxing unit amount by the total of the homestead credit fund amount to get the taxing unit percentages. And those taxing unit percentages are going to be multiplied times the balance to determine the taxing unit share of the balance. So if the fund balance is negative, then you'll be allocating the tax to each taxing unit a portion of that negative balance, and that amount is what you will be deducting on the Form 22 at the December settlement against the taxing unit's general fund distribution, or if in the case of schools, against the transportation fund. Those amounts that you deduct will be quietus to the 1001 Homestead Credit Fund to cover the negative balance. So in the end, at the conclusion of the December settlement, then the 1001 Homestead Credit Fund should have a zero balance if all of the allocations have been done correctly and deducted correctly and quietus to the 1001 fund. If the 1001 fund balance is positive, then those taxing unit percentages that you determined and you apply to that balance to get the amount for each taxing unit, those amounts will be added on the Form 22, and you will have to add on the Form 22 the levy excess fund as one of the funds, and you will then add that on there as a distribution to the levy excess fund, and the taxing unit, when they receive your distribution, will receipt that to their levy excess fund. In the case of the county, then you will just be transferring the money for the county share, transferring the money in the county share of the HEA balance over to the county's levy excess fund. The amounts that the balance of the 1001 Homestead Fund will have to be transferred to the settlement fund to cover the distributions to the taxing units. So whenever we get the worksheet finished, then we'll be sending each county their worksheet, and there will be instructions going out with that worksheet explaining in more detail about the process of determining the taxing unit amounts from the worksheets, and then the process of determining the taxing unit percentages, and those percentages that you will use then to apply to the balance of the HEA 1001 fund, and depending on its positive or negative will be the process will be outlined in the instructions for the December settlement.